Welcome to Faithing Out Loud. I'm Pastor Tony Ruth Smith, and this is my husband, Pastor Wesley Smith.
Hello.
And we are delighted that you're here to be with us as we think about what it means to live our lives out loud in the world in a way that honors Christ. Let's join the conversation.
This week, we're talking about Holy Week. And so this episode is released right at the beginning of Holy Week as we kind of move towards Easter Sunday, which is the most important day on the Christian calendar, the holiest of the holy days. And I get into, and I'm sure this year it won't be any different. Me and our son, we have an ongoing argument about what's more important, Christmas or Easter.
Easter, it was the first of the celebrations, the first festival of the Christian church.
I know that, but trying to convince our son of that.
Well, Christmas was probably actually last.
I'm just saying, me and Daniel are going to have some.
This is when you just remind him that he is a child and you are an adult and you have a master's of theology. Mic drop.
Yeah, because that works. Anyway, so Holy Week. And I think part of what we're thinking about this week is why we should not skip the events of Holy Week. Why is it important to pay attention to those things that happen, like Holy Thursday or Maundy Thursday? We'll explain that in a minute. And Good Friday as a way of preparing ourselves for the Easter celebration.
Because here's an observation.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a decent crowd at most every church on Palm Sunday because children will walk around and wave their palm branches and whatnot. And then there'll be a real big crowd on Easter.
Yes.
And the attendance at both Holy Thursday and Good Friday will be at every church I have ever served, everywhere, rural, suburban, urban, big churches, little churches, all the churches. Methodist churches, Catholic church, all the churches. Significantly smaller. And there is much to be lost in the Easter celebration if you have not participated. And I'm not, please hear me, I'm not saying you have to have worshipped at a specific worship service. If you do not observe Holy Week in some fashion, in your own spiritual life, there are things that are lost about the impact of Easter when you skip Holy Week.
Now, I want to be clear. I want us to be clear about this. You're not complaining about that so much as you are just stating the reality of what it is. I've kind of come around on this. Early in ministry, I used to be grumpy and complain. Shocker. I used to be. It used to irritate me that people would only come on like Christmas Eve and Easter.
Right.
But the longer I'm in ministry, the more, whether you come on, whether you're just a Christmas and Easter attender, I'm just glad people are there.
Right. That's absolutely true. And the power, okay, so my favorite thing, when I was growing up, my mama always had our whole extended family at our house for an Easter brunch. And that meant that the worship service that I went to was a sunrise service on Easter.
Right.
And that sunrise service was at this little church, this little Methodist church that's not my home church, but the closest church to our house. And we would do that service in the cemetery. And as an adult, that continues to be my favorite place to do a sunrise service. But the impact of watching the sunrise in the middle of a cemetery and speaking about resurrection and the power of what God has done and how Jesus has conquered death and how the tomb was empty, that is a little bit lost if you have not, or not lost, there is so much more added to it if you have allowed yourself to walk with Jesus to the cross and you've remembered that he gave up his last breath and he literally died. It's not like Jesus wasn't resuscitated. Jesus was resurrected. And so the power of understanding, if you want to understand why he rose, you got to understand why he died. Why there's power in the resurrection has very much to do with why he died and why he died.
Let's put this in order.
Okay.
Because really what happens in Holy Week tells a story.
That's right.
And I think when I was growing up, and my home church was United Methodist, but it wasn't what you would call a high church liturgical. It wasn't liturgical. Right. And so I got kind of like the Reader's Digest abridged version of the story of Holy Week.
And who doesn't love the Reader's Digest?
Well, I mean, it's the story's there, right, but it's not the full story.
Right.
And so we would do Palm Sunday, and then the next thing we would do would be Good Friday. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Good Friday, followed by Easter and all those celebrations. But there's more, definitely a lot more to Holy Week, and the history of the church. Like each day has some significance. Like there's mm-hmm. something significant about each day. And by the way, I have this pulled up on my phone here because this is not. I don't just have like some of what I'm going to talk about is not just in my head, because some of this is more Roman Catholic tradition.
So you don't have this in your head, but you do know, every single album that Led Zeppelin, Pearl Jam, and Steely Dan ever did, and all the songs in order on those albums?
Yes.
Just asking.
Yes.
Just for clarity.
Sometimes when I can't sleep, I will kind of go through the track list of all the Led Zeppelin albums in my head. Yes, true. Anyway.
I'm just saying one of those things is holier than the other. Go ahead.
I am aware. Judge not.
Okay.
So Holy Week begins really with Palm Sunday.
Okay.
It's also, sometimes you'll see it as Palm Passion Sunday, and part of that is in worship. What we choose to focus on. You can focus on Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry, mm-hmm. or you can focus on telling of the Passion story. So it's Palm Passion Sunday.
And what is Passion story?
It's a story of Jesus' betrayal, arrest, and trial, and then suffering. Passion comes from the Latin word for suffering.
That's interesting.
So,
what is the Latin word for suffering? Do we know?
Yeah, passio.
Oh, okay.
That's where you get passion. And
passion is suffering.
The root of it is.
There's a marriage tip for you.
Yeah, don't dig too deeply on that. That's a different episode of the podcast, I think. And every church I've ever served, every church I've ever been a pastor has been Palm Sunday.
Right.
And part of the reason for that, one, is it's celebratory.
Right.
Two, it typically involves children. And when you get the children involved, people, rightly
Hosanna
so,
loud, Hosanna.
People
right?
love it. So, but Passion Sunday is about Jesus, and we talk about the triumphal entry, Jesus entering Jerusalem. And the Gospels, there's this, it's kind of like a sarcastic street parade. They entered through a side gate, so not the primary front gate or one of the bigger gates of Jerusalem, entered through a side gate, and instead of riding a horse, a steed like an emperor would do, he rides a donkey.
Right.
But people are cheering and celebrating as if this is, and it's kind of a mockery of what was known as a Roman triumph, which was this big victory parade after some military victory by a general or the emperor. They would, so they only had, a small kind of number of these throughout Roman history, but you have this triumph, which involved the whole city. They would kind of march right through the middle of Rome, and it was this huge spectacle. And so the triumphal entry is kind of feels like it's kind of making fun of the triumph.
Right.
But
we're a different kind of triumph that we're
different
celebrating.
Kind of triumph.
And the people lay the palm branches or their cloaks on the road, depending on which version you're reading, and they cry Hosanna, and that word means save us.
Save us now.
Save us now. Hosanna to the Son of David. So there's this invitation at Holy Week. And so what's interesting to me about that is there's these huge crowds that welcome Jesus into the city. And by the time we get to Friday, it is just a little handful of people at the cross. And I think that that's instructive for us to help us understand. Like, the cross is hard. The journey is hard. And we all want the victory, but we forget how the victory happens.
Right.
And so you go from there, and you have Jesus's last week in Jerusalem. Things like when Jesus goes and flips over tables. Yep. And I read this thing this morning that made me, when you read something and you go, ooh, because it's like somebody gut punches you. Mm-hmm. Okay, I had a gut punch moment this morning. It says, there was this post that said, "Father, forgive me for the times that I have craved a place at a table that you would have flipped." Mm. Oh.
Yeah, that is a gut punch statement.
Right? So that's a little bit of the flavor of Holy Week, is that sense of Jesus is confronting the things in this world that keep people away from the freedom that God wants us to have.
Right.
The things in this world that keep us away from relationship with God, that sever relationship with us and one another, and that even separate us within our own selves.
Right.
And so all of that is sin, but we reduce sin to discrete little acts, and we forget that what Jesus is coming to deal with is, yes, lying and gossip and whatnot, but more the way all of those things separate us and divide us and break us, and including things like sitting at tables. I want to sit at the popular kids' table. I want to sit with the important people. And here's Jesus walking into Jerusalem, flipping over tables and calling people out. And it's striking.
Talk about cleansing the temple, flipping over the tables. What is known as the cleansing of the temple. That during Holy Week, that's historically, that's the focus of Holy Monday.
Right.
So triumphal entry, Sunday, Holy Monday, turning over the table, cleansing the temple. And then kind of moving through, and we don't recognize necessarily Holy Monday and Holy Tuesday or Holy Wednesday, but these are Christians throughout history of the church have celebrated these things.
And if you're reading the story of the last week of Jesus' life, if you're just going to read that this week, this is sort of a good pattern to follow.
Yep.
So this Monday, read that story of the flipping the tables and think about what tables that Jesus would have flipped am I sitting at. It's too easy for me to go, yeah, I hope he flips their table.
Yeah,
right. And not be real about the places that I'm sitting at a table that Jesus would have flipped over.
Right.
The introspection that's required there is just really important.
Yep.
So,
Holy Tuesday focuses on Jesus' predictions of his death. And what I saw, not much happens on Holy Tuesday, but I did learn this, and I never heard of this before, but Holy Wednesday is also known as Spy Wednesday.
Spy Wednesday. Pray tell more.
Well, it's focused on Judas.
Oh, Judas is hard.
Judas was the quote-unquote spy
right
amongst the disciples. And so we're getting kind of the tension is rising through the story of Holy Week.
Right.
Have Jesus confronting corruption in the temple, Jesus predicting his death, and then on Holy Wednesday or Spy Wednesday, through Judas' action, we remember the wheels start turning with Judas' betrayal of Jesus.
Right, and what's hard about that is that Judas has walked with Jesus this whole time. Sometimes we think that the worst people are the people that never know Jesus, but this is somebody that has known Jesus, and his problem with Jesus is that Jesus is that he doesn't like the kind of Savior Jesus is going to be.
Right.
He had this idea in his head about the kind of Savior that Jesus was supposed to be. And Jesus, if we're going to focus on that with the Tuesday thing, that Jesus has just predicted that he's going to go die.
Right.
And that doesn't fit with Judas's expectation in his narrative. And that's why he betrays Jesus.
Right.
And so I think this is us finding ourselves in the story. Where is Jesus not the Savior we expected him to be? That we don't like who Jesus saves, how Jesus saves them, the things that, part of Jesus' passion predictions in all of the Gospels is Jesus saying things like, if anyone wants to follow me, you have to deny yourself, take up your cross. And we found well and good with Jesus having a cross. I'm not really interested in me carrying one.
Right.
And so for me to be real about the ways that I have some pieces of Judas's betrayal in me.
Yeah.
That I want Jesus to be different than who he is. I want him to be easier. I want him to be more palatable. I want him to be more aligned with what society is doing. And he doesn't do that. Jesus does not conform and align to those things. And that's hard.
And just this morning, I was reading Luke 4 about the temptation. And in Luke, the second temptation is the devil says, "You worship me, I'll give you authority or power over all these kingdoms of the world." And so Jesus, in the crucifixion, Jesus is laying aside earthly power, like refusing to wield earthly power. But there's a greater power at work. And so odds are that Judas was expecting kind of the Messiah to conquer the enemy using worldly power.
Right.
And when Jesus made it clear that worldly power was not his path, that he was laying aside that power,
Right.
I tend to think that that's what motivated Judas's betrayal.
Right. And what's hard is like in one of the Gospels, I'm not going to be able to call it right now, that Judas's betrayal happens right after this woman anoints Jesus' feet with a costly oil.
Yep.
And he says, "Why was this oil not sold and all the money given to the poor?" Like Judas's motive, like he wanted to take care of poor people. Like it's easy to other Judas.
Yeah.
And when we other Judas, then we don't have to identify with Judas. Yeah. And I'm just suggesting maybe we should not other Judas. We need to ask God, where is there some element of Judas in me?
Yep.
That I, in my, and out of goodness, like I want to feed the hungry. I want to take care of the poor. Like let's use that money. That we lose some of what Jesus is trying to do.
Right.
He's doing Judas wanted something that actually is a good, and Jesus does not condemn the good Judas wanted to do. It's that Judas wanted it to go his way and not Jesus's way.
Right.
And that's just a challenge.
Yep.
So don't other Judas.
Yes.
That's Wednesday.
And so we get to Thursday of Holy Week, which you can think about it in two ways. This is typically when you're going to have a worship service.
Right. Either called Holy or Maundy Thursday. What's the difference, Wes?
Well, Maundy Thursday comes from the old word where we get the same word mandate or command.
Mandatum.
And Maundy if the worship service is a Maundy Thursday service, it's going to focus on foot washing. And we call it Maundy or mandated Thursday because Jesus gave the mandate in the Gospel of John that we are to wash one another's feet.
Right.
And so in a lot of places I've served, Maundy Thursday included foot washing. The larger the church, the more of a logistical nightmare that is. And you get the spectrum of reactions. Some people, you mentioned foot washing, and they like get nauseous.
I'm out.
No, I'm done. Nauseous. So Maundy Thursday, and that's about being a servant. Mm-hmm. Jesus commands us to serve others. He said, "I've come to serve, not to be served." Holy Thursday is if it's a Holy Thursday service, the central focus then what happens in worship is communion,
right?
The Lord's Supper. It's rare in my experience that it's rare for those to be combined.
Really?
For most of the time, it's either we do communion, and what we've done in the past years, we've had a Holy Thursday service with foot washing afterwards for those who want to in a time of meditative prayer in the chapel. We've done that a couple times. Me personally, I could see going from communion to foot washing, but from foot washing to communion, especially if you or I are washing feet and then presiding over the table, that feels a little sketchy to me. I know we got hand sanitizer, but still. These are things that go through my head if we combine services.
Am I allowed to be honest and tell you I think that's a silly thing to go through your head?
Yeah, you're allowed to be honest. It is silly.
Because I've often done both.
I have too. I'm just telling you what goes through my head.
Okay.
About these things.
So, and here's the truth. Probably that goes through a lot of people's heads.
Yeah.
Right. Is that we are, we tend to be grossed out by feet.
Yeah.
People don't want anybody to see their feet. I don't want anybody to touch my feet. It's weird. And in Jesus' time, you got to understand, these are people that wore sandals all of the time, or were barefoot all of the time. And so this is a practical thing. Their feet were literally, legitimately dirty. And just like, you got to think of it like when you go to somebody's house and you take off your shoes when you walk in so you don't track dirt through the house.
Right.
People would have you would go to somebody's house and they would wash your feet so that you could then walk through the house.
Right.
Okay, and it was usually the job of a servant.
Yes.
And so there's this beautiful moment when Jesus takes off his outer robe and he kneels down in front of all the disciples and he washes everybody's feet. And Peter, he washes Judas's feet. There's something to meditate on. Mm-hmm. And he washes Peter's feet, and Peter's like, no, you can't wash me. I don't, And he says, well, listen, if I don't wash your feet, then you can't have any part of me. And then Peter, because he's like literally all or nothing. It's like, well, then wash my whole body. And Jesus is like,
nah, just the feet, Peter.
Just the feet, Peter.
Calm down.
Right. And then he says, the word mandatum comes from when Jesus says, a new commandment I give you, that you should love one another as I have loved you.
Yeah.
Like you should do what I have done for you. And he doesn't necessarily literally mean we have to, the washing of the feet part. The bigger thing is the humbling ourselves before each other in service.
Yes, serving one another.
Serving one another, because that's what he's getting ready to do for us.
Okay, so Maundy Thursday or Holy Thursday, we remember Jesus as servant, and also the Last Supper. So if the focus is communion, we talk about the Last Supper. That's also times when churches will do, I just lost the name for it, a Seder meal, connecting Passover to the events of Holy Week. And then we get to Good Friday, which... in my experience, a lot of times we have a Tenebrae service. And Tony Ruth, what does Tenebrae mean?
It means darkness. So a Tenebrae is a service of darkness. So like, you know how in Advent, we slowly, progressively light the Advent candle over the season of Advent. Mm-hmm. So the coming of the light. A Tenebrae service is an extinguishing of candles where you're walking through everything that happens after the Last Supper. So Jesus goes to Gethsemane, he's betrayed, he prays in the garden. When he prays in the garden, he's betrayed, he's handed over, he goes before the high priest, he goes before Pilate, he's condemned, he carries the cross, he's crucified, he says the final words on the cross, and he dies. And as you read that story, you're slowly extinguishing candles and reminding you that the darkness, the growing darkness as we go toward this time. Because here's the thing. Jesus died.
Yeah.
The price of sin, the penalty for sin, is death. And that goes right back to the garden. If you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will surely die.
Yes.
Like right there. This is not a spoiler. Like it's right there at the very beginning.
Yeah, this should not be a surprise.
No. And so to walk with Jesus on that journey and think about our own dark places. And again, that's hard spiritual heavy lifting. And yet that's the journey of Holy Week. Holy Week invites us to be honest and real about the things that ultimately are why we need Jesus to do what he's doing for us.
Right.
We need his willingness to be obedient, as Paul writes, to death, even death on a cross. We need his faithfulness.
Yes.
To set us free.
And so on Good Friday, the focus then is on the crucifixion. And sometimes churches will have stations of the cross where people can come in and kind of go through each station of the cross and pray. But it's leading you up to Jesus' death. And so it's a heavy service, which explains, at least to me, why the attendance is typically lower for a good. It's heavy, and then we move into what is known as Holy Saturday,
which is very quiet,
silence, and it's really Holy Saturday is about Jesus in the tomb,
right?
And we're going to kind of end this episode with. In that silence of Holy Saturday, awaiting what comes next. And so we're going to keep talking about that next time. Thank you for listening to Faithing Out Loud. Be sure to like and subscribe if your platform allows that. We'll see you next time.